Okay guys, it's time to get functional. And in this video, we're going to learn about functions. So what is a function? Well, basically a JavaScript function is a block of code designed to perform a particular task. A JavaScript function is defined with a function keyword. So we just need to type in function, and this is already a function. Well, not yet, but this is the keyword for the function, followed by a name. So let's call it my first function, and then followed by two parentheses. Now, a JavaScript function is executed when something is invoked or it is called upon. So normally a function ends then within curly braces with, wait a second, first. There we go, first function. So a JavaScript function needs to end somehow, and it needs to return something, okay? So in this case, let's just say we'll return my, this is my function. Okay, so why isn't anything happening? Well, because a function needs to be invoked, as I said. So there's a few ways we can do that. We can call my function, and if I close this, nothing will happen because I could actually console log. So let me just really quickly show you this. So console log my function. Let me actually copy this in. And this will console log the function itself. We just console logged everything that is in here, but we should see this is my function. So let me comment out the console log, and here we open and close parentheses. And now the function would be returning a string if I actually console log this. So console log this right here. Okay, and now it's returning a console log of a string with this is my first function. We could do this with the console log if we take this out, so it should return this is my function within here. So I'm going to comment this one out. This is my function, comment back in the console log. And now I'm going to open and close parentheses. And as you can see, now it's returning, it's console logging the function, and the function is returning what we typed within the function. So we can call functions by invoking them by typing the name and open and closing parentheses, or we can also call them within a console log. But this is just for sharing purposes. We're not constantly console logging things. We could also return multiple things in a function. So let me actually just use this function right here. So let me copy this, and instead of this function name, I'm going to type in now multi-return. So I'm just renaming and giving the totally new name. This is a totally new function. Return. There we go. Okay, so we could return multiple things. So I'm also going to take this out, and I'm just going to type in here a argument, and we will learn about arguments in just a few seconds. A color, and I will say if, now let's create an if statement. If the color, so if this argument, you see is blended out, but as soon as I type it in here, it's now called upon. So if the argument is equal to the string end value of red, then return a string of danger. Else if our argument of color is equal to the string of green, you should return success, and else it should return color is missing. Okay, so now let's invoke our function by calling upon it. So let's say function. Actually, I'm going to console log it because it doesn't do anything if I don't console log it. So function, I'm going to call my function now. And within parentheses again, so color is missing. It always spits out color is missing because it didn't type in anything for the argument. If I type in a string of red, then it's returning danger. If I type in green, it returns success. And if I type in, let's say, blue, then it says color is missing because it doesn't have anything assigned to it. Okay, so this is a multiple return. And now let's talk about this parameter here. So function parameters. Or arguments. So what is this argument or parameter? Well, it's actually something that is predefined or just called or just invoked in a function. So let me create another function. Let's actually we can actually use our first function. So still my function, and now let's give this a parameter of name. So the parameter always goes within the parentheses. And now we will return this parameter of name. So as soon as I type it in here, it is invoked. And if I would now console log our function again, let me copy this instead of here and pass it in a string of Norbert, then this string will be passed in here and it will be returned. As you can see, we have Norbert. We could also add something to it. So if I would concatenate something to it, let's say Norbert is here. Boom. Then we have, actually let me put a space in it. Then we have the name plus the string of is here. So function arguments are the values received by the function when it's invoked. Inside the function, the arguments or the parameters has a local variable, so it's only working within here. We could also pass in multiple parameters, so I'll actually create another one. Let's copy this, go down here, and let's type in here comment multi parameters. Okay, and let's give this a first name, so one parameter, and a last name. Again, I typed in first wrong. First. There we go. So the two parameters are separated by a comma, not a dot. And now let's say I want to return my first name plus my last name. Now let's console log our function again. And now, well, it's returning a Norbert and a undefined, because we only have within here one string. So in order to solve this, I will type in now another string of Meinhardt, and as soon as I typed it in, it returns the second string. Now let me also type in here a empty string, so we have a space between them. Now before ES6, if we wanted to do something like assign default parameters to a function, then we would need to use if statements and the type of. So let me just give you an example. Let's say my function again, and within our function we would have the first name and the last name. So until here it's pretty much the same. And now I would need to create a if statement, and within the if statement I would say that if the type of first name, because let me actually console log first name first of all. So if I console log within here, first name, let's see what happens. And let me comment this part out. Undefined. So from the, actually, did I talk about this from the, you can see in the JavaScript, it's also telling you from what file of JavaScript and from what code line it's returning something. So from the line 37, which is this console log, actually, let me comment all of this out. Everything that we got up here, so it doesn't get confusing. Now let's console log and also invoke our function, console log function, my function. So now it's returning undefined, undefined, and undefined from 69. It's also returning this as undefined. The first name wasn't defined. If I would also console log last name, we have two undefined. So let me comment this out. This is why we use the type of first name is equal to the value and type of undefined. Then first name should be, and now we would assign it a default value of, let's say, Arabella. And now we would need to move on, so create another if. And once again, if the type of last name also is equal to the type and value of undefined, then it should return a default value of last name, which is, let's say, beautiful. Okay, so now let's try this out by returning now the first name plus a empty string with a space with internet and the last name. Okay, so if I would close this up and console log it down here, my first name, and although I didn't pass in here parameter, Arabella beautiful. Okay, but these are the default values. This can be changed. So if I would type in here now a string of Laura, then Arabella, our first value, the first name, would be replaced with Laura. And then we could also replace the second one with is a mom. Is a mama. Okay, so we could create default values and we can also change them. Now, after ES6, or not after, but with ES6, we have another possibility. So I'm just going to copy this. Actually, I don't know if you notice or not, but you can actually close out things from here. So let me copy this entire thing and comment it out. So we will have it. And now let's type it in. Let's copy it in here. And instead of having this, I'm going to actually delete this if statements. And I'm going to assign them. So let me also take out this. The values, the default values, we're going to assign them right within the arguments or the parameters. You can see if I hover over them, parameter, and takes in any, takes in whatever. So if I would give this the string of Laura, and then the last time you can see it already appears, Laura, and undefined, it's waiting for a second value here. And let's say another string of Menhart. Okay, and as soon as I hit save, we have our default values, which can be then later on also changed. So let's change the first name to Norbert, and then comma, and let's say, what should I say? Dad. Okay. Okay, next up, let's take a look at function expressions. Next up, let's take a look at function expressions. And this just means that we are assigning a variable to a function. So let's create here const, and let's call it sum. And now we are assigning it to a function. So let's say function, and really quick note, this function can be named or unnamed. So I can name it something and then type in here the value. So let's say x, and then actually return something like x plus x. And now if I would console log our function, console log the function of sum, and invoke it, well, it's not a number because it's nothing assigned. Now if I would type in here 20, so I'm giving x the value of 20, and 20 plus 20 is equal to 40. Now let's take out the name, and we'll see this is now a unnamed function, and this is still working. And I could also, let me take out the 20 from here, I could also assign it within here a value of 20. So see, we get 40 again, and we can reassign the values. If I would type in here 15, then 15 plus 15 is 30, and as you can see, we could reassign it. Now, next up, let's talk about IIFEs. And if it just states, let me type it in, IIFEs, IIFEs. And an IIFEs means immediately evocable function expressions. So basically, we are declaring and running a function at the same time. And we need to put the function into parentheses and then also close it up with parentheses right before our semicolon. So let me just give you an example. So let's say, so we need to put it into parentheses, and we're giving, so this would be normally an anonymous function. So function, and then curly braces, and let's say it will console log a hello, actually a string of hello, and let's just close it up. And now right after this parenthesis, I'm going to open and close. So let's just take a look in our console. Open and close parenthesis, and it's running. So as soon as I do this, it's automatically running. Now, of course, we could also type in here a argument, a parameter of, let's say, name, and down here I would just add this name. So concatenate it with, let's first of all type in an empty string, and then use the name. Oh, and this should be now in a template 0. Okay, so so we don't need to do this anymore, and also this. And now down here is where I would pass in my argument. So let's say I pass in here the name of Norbert, and we get hello Norbert. And there are too many spaces here, so just hello Norbert, exclamation mark. Okay, so once again, a IIFE is a function that is automatically called, so automatically invoked as soon as it is created, and it normally is a anonymous function, and it could also take in one or more parameters, and yeah, that's an IIFE. So if you're by now asking yourself if we can put functions into objects, then the answer is yes, we can, and they are extremely useful. And when a function is put inside an object, it is called a method. So let's create something like const user. And let's say so first of all, create an object. And let's say the user exists, or users. Actually, users. Let's say this now exists, and we want to add a user. So for this, I'm just going to create a add, then call a function, assign this a function. So we're adding something, we will invoke a function, And now let's console log. We also have a project using this, but I'm just going to show you right now how this works. So console log, let's say user was added. Okay, now you can see it closes up with a column. So now we could do something like edit then user, and this will invoke another function. And now we could console log, and now let's use template literals, and this time I'm going to use template literals, and let's say edit user. Okay, and within here, normally which user would you like to edit? So I would suggest using also a ID for this. So we would type in here argument and ID, and now let's use the ID within our console log. So ID, and now let me actually also call upon the let me actually also call upon this method. So the way we do this is by typing users dot add, and now open and close parentheses. So we're invoking this function right here, and you can always see user was added. And if I want to edit a user, then I would invoke user dot edit, open and close parentheses, and we are invoking now this function out of this method. We can also add functions to our existing method outside of the method. So let's say down here I would use now, so we add to our method of users a delete user. So we could just type in dot delete and function, and now let's say we want to console log delete user. Okay, and if I want to invoke it, it's the same thing as here. We would just now type in user dot delete, and we'll get this. And if we want to edit, because we can now use a parameter in the edit, let's say the second user, just type in here 2, and the undefined disappears, and now we're editing the user number 2. Okay guys, so this is pretty much it for the basics of functions. We will learn much more about functions later on, but this is basically it for this video, so see you in the next one. Bye bye.